morning. Today we're going to work on the wool applique block for the Pine Grosbeak and Wonderfil's wool applique project. The Pine Grosbeak is a large finch, and from the colors of fabric we have, it looks like we are following the regional coloring for a young male bird in North America. This will be fun, so let's get started. Placing and stitching down the appliques is the same process we've followed for the other blocks in this series. In a nutshell, I used a blanket stitch with the 12-weight wool threads in Wonderfil's thread kit that match the wool fabrics. With that in mind, I'm going to start from the point where the appliques are stitched down. Looking at Wonderfil's pattern, I'm going to start with the stem stitch they call for to draw in twigs on which the bird is standing. I've marked out the line to follow with chalk more or less like Wonderfil's. I'm using stitch number 11 on my Bernina 880 with the width 4.1 wide and 1.35 length, so it's squashed together and has a little denser look. It's a little puffy, but I think it will iron out. I don't think I'll have to take it out and re-stitch it. Now there's a bit of a curved twig off of the main branch here, so I'll stitch that next. I'm going to lower the tension just a little too. I'm going to press that and see how it comes out before doing anything else. Okay, when I ironed it, it came out looking fine. It's nice and flat. And I added a little stabilizer. Now I'm going to complete the branches. I have a bit more of my original chalk markings to follow. Some of this branch needs some overstitching because it isn't dense enough. I'm just going to stitch on top. Now I'm going to stitch the veins on the leaves with a triple stitch and a dark green 12-weight spaghetti cotton thread. I'm following the same procedure both Beth and I used with the leaves on the previous bird, the parrot. changed the thread and I found a design I liked a little more than the open fly stitch that was hand-stitched on the original design. This is stitch 699 at 9.0 width. I also lengthened it a little bit and lowered the pressure on the presser foot so it's not quite so heavy. I think I'll use the same thread for the fruits on the plant. That looks really nice. Off camera, I stitched the beak much like I have on the previous birds. It turned out a little taller than the pattern, but I think it looks okay. Next, I'm going to work on the decorative stitching on the wing. I'm starting with the cast-on bullion knots Wonderfield calls for in the instructions. It looks very similar to stitch 416 on my Bernina, which is what I'm going to use. I have it set a little smaller and narrower, and I have it set to stitch starting from the right side of my foot. That looks great. Now I'm going to use the same color of thread for the fruits or buds at each end of the branch. This is one place where a number of different designs could work, so look at what stitches you have on your machine and try them out. One of the things I like about the Bernina is that I can tell it to stitch just one repeat of the pattern. Otherwise, you just have to be careful in watching where to stop the stitch. This looks like it will barely stop before my seam allowance, but it will work. Now I'm putting a decorative detail with a blanket stitch around the wing outline. Next, the belly of the bird has orange feathers down the front. They're all individual, but I have this really neat stitch, 312, that is going to look a lot like a pattern with feathers. They just aren't separated. For the neck, where they call for a chain stitch, I'm using stitch 1354, which is basically a simple zigzag stitch set really narrow. I'm using the orange spaghetti thread again here too. I'm going to add an orange outline around the bird's body as well. Next, Wonderfield calls for a hand-stitched running stitch around the bird's eye. There is a way to do something similar by machine, as you can see on my test piece, where the result looks pretty good. With this technique, you're adjusting the tension so you're actually pulling up some of the color from the bobbin thread rather than the top thread. Unfortunately, it didn't work as well on the wool fabric as it did on my cotton test, so I'm going to have to try something else. I switched to a variegated fruity thread with some dark and some light orange, and I'm just going to try a back stitch over the attempt at a running stitch I made earlier. For the feet, I'm using a tan thread with a satin stitch. I tried to chain stitch it first, but I wasn't happy with how loose it looked. And that's pretty much it for this bird. I hope you all had fun stitching the Pine Grosbeak. Next video, I'm going to try running a double header, the sparrow and the woodpecker. So stay tuned as we try and quilt two birds with one video. Bye for now.